In today's video, I'm going to be fitting an offside rear wheel speed sensor, ABS sensor, to this 2009 BMW E90. I'll also be fitting a brake pad wear sensor while I'm in there. I'd only had this car for about a week when the BMW gong sounded and then the dashboard lit up like a Christmas tree. The ABS light was on, the traction control light, and the BMW iDrive system said that the tyre pressure warning system was inactive. I immediately plugged in my Carista to scan the car for fault codes, and this is what came up. Now, the earlier cars had a reluctor ring each side on the driveshafts at the back, and what would happen is the driveshaft would corrode and swell, and then that would distort the reluctor ring, therefore closing the gap between it and the ABS sensor. And that gap needs to exist in order for the speed sensor to do its job. But these later cars don't actually have the reluctor ring. That element of it is built into the wheel bearing. So this leads me to believe it's this wheel speed sensor, which I'm going to replace. With the wheel off, it's very easy to see where the sensor is, which is right there in the centre of the screen. The wiring passes up and under this upper suspension arm through these two clips, and then there are a couple of clips here, very prone to breaking. Fortunately, I've got some new ones, more about that later. And then it connects up behind here. This pad wear sensor is in a bad way. It had worn through here. I have already inspected this car, so I already knew this, but it had worn through here. I put some tape on it temporarily, and I've got a new one of these too. Again, it passes through these clips and then through the same clips here, and also connects behind here. So let's get this out of the way and we can see where they connect. Fortunately, we don't have to remove this entire wheel arch liner. We can just detach the back section and bend it round. So there's a 10mm plastic nut there, and there's also one up there. With these out the way, we can see how these two components connect. The speed sensor is held in place with a 5mm Allen key bolt. You better pray it's not seized and that it doesn't break off. I've already taken this out for testing, so I know that it will come free. But you may have to manipulate it a little bit. And here it is. At this point, I have worked out that the ABS sensor travels up the back side of this upper arm, and then is the top wire in these clips, and the pad wear sensor travels along the forward side under here and is the lower one in the clip. Before we go any further, let's have a look at the parts here. So this component here from Phoebe Bilstein is the brake pad sensor, and this is the wheel speed sensor. There are different types. The very short, stumpy sensors tend to go with the setup with a reluctor ring. I've changed those before and also replaced reluctor rings on these. But this longer sensor, from what I can gather, is for the vehicles that don't have the reluctor ring. Instead, it takes its signal from a counterpart in the wheel bearing. This part number right here is for the clips that always break. Would you believe it was $4.95 for 10 of these? That was the minimum order quantity, and they didn't want them on the shelf at the dealer, so I had to buy all 10. On eBay, people are selling these individually for between £4 and £8, which is crazy. I'm going to keep these in stock because they always break off. These clips on the upper arm come undone really easily. This knackered old brake sensor just pulls out here, leaving behind this little spring clip that has to be removed as well. Just cutting off some cable ties that were used to temporarily secure this arrangement. These broken clips can be removed. Press and release. And here it all is, withdrawn from the car. These little clips come undone. Refit the new clips. There's a peg on this bracket that goes into a hole like this one on top underneath, and then we can close the clips. This piece here goes inside the bleed nipple cover. The pad wear sensor slots into the inner pad. It's a bit dark and it will be hard to see, but it should be obvious. It slots in right there. The pad wear sensor goes into the lowest part of the clip, and the wheel speed sensor in the upper. Before I snap these shut, I'm just going to connect these up here. There are some slots, so these can only be connected one way. Pushed together like that. That's for the ABS sensor, and this one is for the brake pad wear sensor. Again, there are slots. Okay, so there's a slight problem. I need to move this cable along a little bit. I did wonder. So back to here. Okay, that's correct now. I gave it too much slack at this end. Needed to just go a bit further that way to give it more slack at the other end. Okay, so we've still got enough slack this end here. It's a little bit tight. You can see how that might have worn away on here, the old one. And now there's plenty of slack for that to be fitted, correctly routed, so I can now close up that clip. And the same with the one in there. Wheel arch liner can be refitted. 8mm screws. And the one underneath. It's now just time to refit the wheel speed sensor, which just pushes in like that. And tighten that 5mm Allen key bolt, hex bolt. Doesn't need to be mega tight in case you need to get it out again in the future, and I did apply some anti-seize to that thread before refitting it. Everything's correctly routed, it's time to get the wheel back on and take it out for a test. So just time to reset the fault codes with Carista. Okay, so that's the fault codes reset. Time to take it out for a drive. It is worth mentioning at this point that the fault was intermittent anyway. Sometimes I could drive it for half hour and it would do it towards the end of the journey. Other times it wouldn't do it at all. Sometimes it would reset when I turned the ignition off and then set out again. There was not really any form of pattern to it. So we'll see how this goes and I'll report back. I am back from road test and everything seems fine. The fault hasn't reoccurred. Obviously it was intermittent, so there is always that risk, but hopefully we've nailed it. My biggest concern was that some people had said you had to have genuine BMW sensors in there and that anything else wasn't going to work and they just throw up codes. And obviously there is always the risk that it could be whatever it is that's in the bearing that the sensor actually reads that can fail as well. Let's just start with the cheaper stuff and see how we go from there. So I hope it was useful. If you've got this problem with your car, get it scanned, get it checked, see what codes you've got. You never know, it could just be a wheel speed sensor. Hopefully that's all mine is. See you again in another video very soon.